For more than 100 years you were told a story about the Neanderthals, that they were slow, that they were stupid, brutish, hunched, dragging their knuckles through the ice while smarter humans marched past them into the future. You learned it in school. You saw it in every textbook, every museum diagram, every cartoon. And almost none of it was true. Because in a cave in the south of France, scientists just pulled a skeleton out of the ground that does not fit the story at all. Its DNA carried a message no one expected, a message that says the last Neanderthals were not defeated by their own weakness. Something else happened to them, something stranger, and when researchers finally understood what it was, they realized the version taught in schools for a century had the whole thing backwards. This is the real reason the Neanderthals disappeared. And by the end, you may not think they disappeared at all. To understand why this discovery matters, you have to understand how the lie began. Because that hunched creature in your textbook was never a fact. It was one man's mistake, and he made it on purpose. In 1908, in the village of La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, a nearly complete Neanderthal skeleton was pulled from the earth. It landed on the desk of a French scientist named Marcellin Boule, one of the most respected experts of his day, and Boule did not want Neanderthals to be our relatives. So when he reconstructed the skeleton, he built the creature he already believed in. He drew it stooped, bent-kneed, head thrust forward like an ape, a shuffling half-animal that could barely stand upright. That single drawing shaped how the entire world saw Neanderthals for the next 60 years. There was just one problem. The skeleton Boule used was an old man. His spine was bent because he was riddled with arthritis. Boule had taken the sickness of one elderly individual and turned it into the portrait of an entire species. In 1957, two anatomists re-examined those same bones and reached a very different conclusion. A healthy Neanderthal, they wrote, if he were cleaned up and put in a modern suit, could walk onto a New York subway train and no one would even look twice. Think about that. For 60 years, the caveman you were taught about was really just a sick old man, drawn by someone who wanted him to look inferior. And the experts who built careers on that image were in no hurry to tear it down. But the drawing was only the beginning of what they got wrong. Because the deeper question was never really answered. If they were not what Boule drew, then why are they gone? For decades, the textbook answer stayed the same. They lost. Outcompeted by smarter humans, too primitive to adapt. Case closed. The case was never closed. And in 2015, in a rock shelter hanging over the Rhône River in France, it cracked wide open. The site is called Grotte Mandrin, and the archaeologist leading the dig, a man named Ludovic Slimak, had spent years working there when his team uncovered something no one in France had found in over 3 decades: the intact remains of a Neanderthal. Teeth, a piece of jaw, fragments of the fingers. They gave him a nickname. They called him Thorin, after the dwarf king in The Hobbit, because they had a feeling this one was going to be buried deep and hold a fortune. They had no idea how right they were. Because when Thorin's DNA was finally sequenced and the results came back, they made no sense. None at all. The genetics said Thorin was ancient, that his lineage had split off from other Neanderthals more than 100,000 years ago, but the archaeology said the exact opposite. The layer of earth he was found in, the climate signals frozen in his bones, all of it said Thorin lived recently, around 50,000 years ago, among the very last Neanderthals to ever walk the earth. So which was it? His DNA looked 60,000 years too old for the body it came from. One of these had to be wrong, and Slimak said something that tells you exactly how strange this was. He said his team spent 7 years trying to figure out who had made the mistake, the archaeologists or the geneticists. 7 years on one skeleton. Because neither side could believe what it was seeing. And then it hit them. What if nobody was wrong? What if the DNA and the dirt were both telling the truth? Here is the answer they arrived at. And it is the part that changes everything. Thorin's DNA looked ancient not because he lived long ago, but because his family had been completely cut off from every other Neanderthal for an almost unimaginable stretch of time. Roughly 50,000 years of total isolation. 50,000 years in which his people never mixed, never traded blood, never joined with another group. And now comes the detail that makes your skin crawl. Slimak's team worked out that another Neanderthal population had been living close by. Not on another continent. Not across some impassable ocean, about 10 days' walk away, close enough to reach on foot in under 2 weeks. And for 50,000 years, these two groups of Neanderthals lived beside each other and, in Slimak's own words, completely ignored each other, as if the other did not exist. 50,000 years, a neighbor 10 days away, and nobody ever knocked on the door. You start to see the shape of a problem here. When you cut a population off like that, something happens to it. Thorin's genome carried the fingerprints of it. Long, repeating stretches of identical DNA, the genetic signature of a family marrying too close to itself, generation after generation, with no new blood coming in. His own teeth told the same story. Thorin had grown 2 extra molars, a 4th set of teeth almost no human ever grows, the kind of rare trait that shows up when a bloodline folds in on itself. So there it was. The neat, satisfying answer. The Neanderthals died out because they were inbred, isolated, and trapped in tiny groups too small and too cut off to survive. Except that answer just fell apart too, and this is where the newest science turns everything on its head again. Because in June of 2026, this is how fresh this is, a research team led by a scientist named Alba Bossoms Mesa went looking for the same collapse in a different corner of Europe, and they could not find it. Her team pulled genetic data from 27 Neanderthals across sites in Belgium and France, including a high-quality genome from a cave called Goyet, only the 5th of its kind ever produced on Earth. 27 of them. If the species was dying of its own blood, 27 bodies should have shown it. Not one did. These late Neanderthals were not inbred, they were not isolated, they were genetically diverse, connected across whole regions, part of large, interwoven communities. And here is the line that broke the theory. When the team compared the earliest Neanderthals to the very last ones, they found no rise in harmful mutations, no collapse in diversity over time. In plain words, they were not rotting from the inside, they were not limping toward some genetic dead end. Right up near the end, in this part of Europe, they were doing fine. The researcher who led the study said it flat out. She said she was happy to finally bury the myth that all Neanderthals went extinct because they were too inbred. Sit with that for a second, because now you have 2 skeletons telling 2 opposite stories. Thorin, alone and folding in on himself in the south of France. The Goyet Neanderthals, thriving and connected just to the north, both real, both among the last, both gone anyway. The healthy ones died too, which kills the inbreeding theory where it stands. It was a symptom in some places, never the cause everywhere. And it leaves something far more disturbing behind. Whatever took the Neanderthals reached the strong groups and the weak ones alike. It did not care how healthy you were, and not one of them could outrun it. And when scientists finally found it, it was not a war, and it was not a plague. It was a door that only opened one way. Here is what the DNA actually shows. Around 47,000 years ago, as modern humans pushed into Neanderthal territory, the 2 peoples met, and they had children. We know the exact window now, pinned down in 2024, to a span of just a few thousand years. And those children carried Neanderthal blood forward into the human line. But when scientists look at the reverse, when they search the Neanderthal genomes for fresh human DNA flowing back the other way, they find almost nothing. Bossoms Mesa's team looked at all 27 of their Neanderthals and could not find clear signs of recent human ancestry in a single one. Read that again, because it is the whole mystery in one sentence. Human groups kept absorbing Neanderthals. Neanderthal groups were not absorbing humans back. Picture 2 rivers meeting, but the current only runs in one direction. Every time the 2 peoples mixed, a few more Neanderthals were pulled into the human population and never returned. And the human population was enormous by comparison. Some estimates put it near 10 times larger. A small people, meeting a vast one, being drawn into it a little at a time, wedding by wedding, child by child, for thousands of years. In late 2025, researchers built a mathematical model to test exactly this. And the model showed something that should stop you cold. You do not need a massacre to erase a people. You do not need them to be weak, or sick, or slow. You only need a much larger population to keep flowing in, again and again, for long enough. Over 10 to 30,000 years, the smaller group simply dissolves into the larger one. Their faces change. Their bloodlines blend, and one day you look up and there are no more Neanderthals. The scientists had a phrase for what really happened. They said the Neanderthals may not have gone extinct at all. They were diluted. Now, there may have been a crueler edge to this too. Some of the newest research, and this part is still being tested, so hold it loosely, suggests that mixing the 2 peoples came with a hidden cost written into the blood. One study found Neanderthals carried a blood type variant that could turn a mixed pregnancy dangerous, the mother's body treating her own unborn child as a threat. Another, still under review, points to a gene affecting how blood carries oxygen, which may have quietly caused mixed pregnancies to fail. If either holds up, it means every union between the two peoples may have carried a shadow, some children never born, a slow reproductive drain no one at the time could have understood. A people vanishing not in a single blow, but in the children who never came. But do not let the old lie sneak back in through the side door. None of this happened because they were simple, and the evidence for who they actually were keeps piling up. Deep inside another French cave called Bruniquel, more than 1,000 feet from the entrance in total darkness, someone built rings out of hundreds of broken stalagmites, arranged with care and lit by fire, and they did it around 176,000 years ago. That is not tens of thousands of years before your species reached Europe. It is well over 100,000 years before. Neanderthals were holding fire and building structures in the black heart of a cave, while our ancestors were still an ocean and an age away. And in 2025, on a rock in Spain, researchers found something almost unbearably human. A stone, marked with a single dot of red pigment, and pressed into that pigment, the fingerprint of a Neanderthal man, placed there, they believe, on purpose, more than 40,000 years ago. A person looking at a stone, deciding to leave a mark, deciding to make something, the oldest trace we may ever have of a Neanderthal choosing to create. They buried their dead, they wore eagle talons as jewelry. They made art in the dark, by firelight, 1,000 feet underground. They were another kind of human, and they did not lose to us because they were less than us. So here is where the century-old textbook finally breaks for good. You were taught the Neanderthals were a failed experiment, a dead branch, outcompeted and erased, a cautionary tale about the winners and the losers of evolution. That is the story Boole started with a sick old man and a dishonest drawing, and it is the story schools repeated for 100 years. The truth is harder and far stranger. They were never killed off. They were pulled into us. Their blood runs through nearly every person outside of Africa alive today, commonly 1 to 3% of your entire genetic code, a direct inheritance from a family that has been gone for 40,000 years. Their genes still shape how your immune system fights disease, the color of your skin and hair, how you sleep, even how you feel. Scattered across all living people, and roughly 1/3 of the whole Neanderthal genome is still out there, still working, still switched on inside human bodies right now. Which means the question you were taught to ask was the wrong question all along. It was never really why did the Neanderthals die? The better question, the one the newest science keeps circling back to, is quieter and much more unsettling. Did they ever fully die at all? Or did they simply become part of the story of us, and get written out of the textbooks anyway? The last Neanderthals vanished from the earth around 40,000 years ago. But every dig season, another cave gives up another piece, and the picture keeps shifting under the feet of the very experts who thought they had it settled. Thorin himself is still coming out of the ground in France, 1 grain of sediment at a time, and he has not finished talking yet. So the next time you see that old drawing, the hunched brute, the empty stare, the knuckles in the dirt, remember who drew it, and why. And remember what the bones actually said, once someone finally bothered to listen. If a story like this is why you're here, the real history, the kind that doesn't survive contact with the evidence, then stay a while. There's always another discovery waiting in the dark.